Cynthia Millen. She's a 30-year international and NCAA swimming official and a former NCAA athlete. And she will be talking about how in the sports issue, we're basically going one step forward, two steps back.
This is a very fragmented issue, partially because of the way that our government is set up. We have localities, states, federal government in the United States, and there are various world organizations that handle different parts of sports. So we have world organizations, we have high school, we have club, we have NC2A, we have private leagues. Literally, there are hundreds of different organizations that are dealing with this. So it's not been a unified fight to keep males out of female sports. It's been more like what we call whack-a-mole. You hit one and you hit the other, and then something else pops up. So that's why we say one step forward, two step back. The general direction, however, has been good. And I provided 3 papers, and there'll be links provided at the end of the talk, which will give you a deeper dive, because there's so much here that it's hard to talk about all of it. But I wanted to touch on the subjects of the 3 papers, and especially to attack the fallacies that have been used to promote males in female sports. And the first is that we often hear, especially among governmental people, representatives, is that, oh, there's so few males in female sports. This is just a tiny percentage. Why are you worrying about it? Well, there's a paper, and there's other papers as well. There are literally thousands of males who are or who have been participating in sports, in female sports, and those are only the ones that have been reported, of all ages. And this is a serious problem. And it is a fallacy to think that it's just a small problem. It is not. And it's from grade school age all the way to older adults. Okay. Secondly, why has no one sued on this? Well, literally, there are many lawsuits that have been filed. And again, because of the nature of the sporting world, there's bits and pieces. So we have athletes who are suing, and I'm sure Kara can talk about this better than I can. Athletes who have been suing. There have been parents of athletes who have been suing for minors. There have been organizations that have been suing, and it's frustrating because it's so fragmented. But again, the overall motion is good towards protecting women. I mean, you've got legal issues pertaining to girls who have been denied scholarships because of male participation in sports. You have the huge issue of the right of privacy, which many different groups have been suing on. And again, these are trickling up through the state level, the local level, and eventually I think it will be at the federal level. But again, it's still very, very fragmented, but there are suits that are happening. Sadly, the burden has been put on the athletes. And the athletes, I got involved when it was in 2021, when William Thomas decided to compete as a female in Akron, Ohio, at a swim meet. He was representing the University of Pennsylvania, allowed to compete, wiped out all the records. And we in Ohio became aware of that. That was before he went on and swam at NC2A championships in 2022. And we were appalled that this was happening. Why didn't the referees stop the meet? Why didn't the adults in the room stop the meet? But again, because of the time, he was allowed to compete as a woman. And after that, you would have thought that the NC2A would have stopped it, obviously seeing the obvious unfairness of it all, and they did not. So it's been taking a while for all of this to trickle up, and for the kind of lawsuits that are being filed, they're taking a while to get processed. Okay, and then finally, what are sports organizations doing? And that's the third paper. This paper basically grades all the different sports organizations. There's some that aren't in there, but most of them are. And it's a sport by sport list, and it gives you websites that you can go to if you're interested in a particular sport. When I played lacrosse, before Title IX, that it was so clear that women were treated unfairly, and I don't have to go into that, but you all know how women did not have the same advantages, support as men did. Then finally, after Title IX, they did get that support, and now it's so frustrating as a former athlete that it's being destroyed. And I'm sure a lot of you have experiences with that. There is the gold standard. That is when a sports organization will say only biological females can compete in female sports, period. And this brought up another fallacy that, oh my gosh, they'll be looking at athletes' genitals to see if they're female or male. No, all you need is a swab of spit from your cheek, and that will determine whether you have XY chromosomes or not, right? And the sports organizations, a few of them have done this. Many organizations, including the NC2A, very sad, are still using inept or bogus criteria. NC2A right now is saying whatever is on your birth certificate. Well, we all know that in the majority of states in the United States, you can change your birth certificate, right? So that's not helpful at all. Others, like USA Swimming, say that, well, if you transitioned before puberty, then you are that sex. Again, we all know, and the science has proven, that males have an advantage over females from the time they're born. They don't even have to go through puberty. That's why, just speaking swimming wise, we have categories of age and sex, because an 8 and under boy is going to typically win over an 8 and under girl, right? I love the statistic that Katie Ledecky, God bless her, has come out and said that, you know, she's won more Olympic gold medals than any athlete, yet she would not even make the Olympic team on a male team, right? So you just have the idea of the disparity here. Others are still relying on we'll lower the testosterone level, right? And then magically the male becomes a female. Well, we all know that's not true. I mean, William Thomas lowered his testosterone, and the testosterone levels that they're lowering to, right, are still way higher than any woman could ever achieve. As a matter of fact, if a woman doped herself up to that hormone level, she would be banned from the sport for doping. So we're getting some organizations that are changing, and typically in the US, if a world organization makes a change, then the US will follow suit. But it's still slow going. And it's so frustrating because while this problem's been going on for a long time, it really came to a head with William Thomas and the NC2A. Well, then why, when it's so obvious to everybody that males don't deserve to be in women's sports, don't deserve to be in women's locker room, it's not only a fairness issue, but it's a safety issue, why is this dragging on so long? Well, you can guess, money. There is lots and lots of money in gender affirming care. The larger hospitals want to keep the gravy train growing, and they are very powerful, and they have large corporate support. For example, here in Ohio, which is generally a very conservative state, the legislature passed a bill which banned males from female sports and banned gender affirming care for minors, right? Very well supported bill. I mean, even some Democrats went for it, but it was not controversial. But Governor Mike DeWine, a Republican, went and talked to the powers that be at Nationwide Children's Hospital. There's one in Columbus and one in Cincinnati, huge nationwide system. And he vetoed the bill because he said he was concerned about the parents of these kids. Thankfully, it was passed over his veto, but Nationwide was also a huge donor to his campaign. And you have this throughout the entire company. Large corporations, for example, that support the NC2A, right? the NC2A president could have immediately said, wait a minute, William Thomas should not swim. He's a male. End of story. But he went along with it, right? Until he said, oh, it's up to the government to pass the rule. No, the NCAA can pass their own rules. They don't need the government. And now they're following the stupid, birth certificate rule. Transitioning is a gold mine for hospitals and for other organizations who are offering this gender affirming care. The other issue is we are too nice. And I think, imagine if you would, a female forcing her way into a male locker room or onto an all-male team. She'd be kicked out right away. She'd be laughed off and nobody would have any problem with it. We women, I'm speaking for myself, and if this applies to you, then you, but only for myself, we've been gaslit by the entire transgender industry that we need to feel sorry for them. We need to be nice. We need to include them. Where will they play sports if they can't play on the women's team? And well, find a co-ed team or go play with the men. But we've been so nice and afraid to say that. No, we are not denying access to your child. No, you cannot transition and become a woman. And as a matter of fact, it's insulting to put on women face and to pretend that you're a woman. But we, and I'm speaking for myself, have been hesitant to say that. And I can remember, God bless Kara, the first time I saw Kara on the news where she said, no, we do not have to go along with the language. We do not have to pretend. We do not have to say transgender because there's no such thing as transgender. And she was right all along. So what can you do as an individual in your country, in your state? Find out what your state is doing. Find out what your locality is doing. I went and testified at the Ohio State House and in the Senate bill and in the lower house, and brought the facts with me and testified. Get involved. Don't afraid to speak out. Get involved in your locality. Get involved in your sport. Make sure that your sport is following the gold standard, and then we all will win. The other thing is we have to speak out about the gender affirming care. Mastectomy, those of you who have had it because of cancer, know it is not fun. It is not simple. No, you cannot get your breast back, right? What is being done for children is horrific. So don't be afraid to speak out. Don't be afraid to not be nice. Thank you for this time. If anybody has any questions, I am honored to be here, and what WDI has been doing is fabulous. Thank you so much.
People will say, oh, it's only one or two. And as you point out, that is not true. Someone wrote an absolutely brilliant article. It spoke about the ripple effect of even allowing one male into female-only sports. It talked about the psychological impact of every single team member, female team member, the psychological impact of all of their family members, right? So even one male on a women's sports team or competing in a women's event has ripple effects that can be documented.
Kara, you touch on an issue. My girls swam, and the thing they loved the most was they were competing against themselves and they were swimming, but they loved being in the locker room with other girls. That's where they could talk about, oh, my breasts are getting bigger. Oh, I'm starting my period. Oh, how do you handle this? Oh, blah, blah, blah. That privacy is so important for girls. And you're right, one male would screw the whole thing up.
What does the NCAA actually have to say?
They have run away, and Riley Gaines, God bless her, has been like a hound dog on them, just, chasing after them, talking to them, trying to get a meeting. They won't meet with her. They won't meet with any of the athletes who actually were screwed out of spots, right? Imagine swimming your whole life to get to NC2As and you don't make the final 8 because there's this guy in the first place, right? And they have been cowards. They have been cowards. So they haven't responded to any of this. And again, from what I've read, it's the corporate pressure. The people who are Coca-Cola, the big corporations who are giving them money don't want don't want the NC2A to come across as again being too mean. So they just refuse to meet with anybody.